Why should people stop getting relationship advice from TikTok?
Oh man. Oh wow. Okay. There are a plethora of reasons
Yeah.
why no one should be getting relationship advice from, quite frankly, I think any social media platform.
Yeah.
But TikTok in particular, there's a lot of amazing creative people on the platform. That's just like the nature of social media. For every brain rot, sloppy profile, there's going to be a few more genuinely amazing people. But with that being said, people aren't infallible. How do I word this? I think a lot of creatives, especially relationship advice creatives on the platform, they have two things in mind. They have engagement and they have advice. And I think it's really difficult to blend the two into a genuinely productive platform or profile. Otherwise, they'll lose engagement.
Yeah.
I've written about this in one of my latest Substack posts about how I think of those kinds of TikTok influencers as dating apps,
Yeah.
where dating apps, they want you to keep scrolling. They'll tell you, oh, we're here, like Hinge, for example, the dating
Yeah.
app that's meant to be deleted, as they like to say,
Sure.
which is yeah, entirely not true. They do a good job of making it seem that way. But at the end of the day, it's the algorithm that dictates who on the
Mm.
platform. And I think the same could be said about TikTok. Maybe you'll get one TikTok video of someone saying, oh, if your boyfriend is doing this, or oh, if your girlfriend is doing this, he doesn't love you. She doesn't love you. He's cheating on you. She's cheating on you. And then you'll get another TikTok influencer who will say the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Or you'll hear literally hundreds of different relationship theories and, oh, I read this here, I read this there. And at the end of the day, they're there for engagement. They don't know you. They don't care. I don't want to say everyone, but I say the vast majority don't care about whether or not you're in a happy relationship.
Yeah.
And that isn't to say they don't offer some good advice. I think one example I used was Emma Chamberlain's
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
I think she's a pretty great example of someone who has a large audience, who does offer valuable advice. I may not agree with everything that she says, but I think her heart is genuinely in the right place. And I think the same could be said for a lot of other creators. But as simple as it sounds, the main reason why someone should stop getting relationship advice from TikTok is, yeah, they want engagement. And at the end of the day, you know your situation more than the stranger on your phone. And I think it's really hard to ignore that stuff. Our whole lives are dictated by social media. But yeah, I think the sooner people, man, I'm going to sound like my parents, but it really is that phone. It really is
Yeah.
that phone. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And it's called an attention economy for a reason, not like a pair bonding and love
Yeah.
matching economy. And it's a shame because we're hardwired to have this negativity bias, to have our attention grabbed by controversial takes. So if you have controversial takes in your content, then that's going to get more engagement. More people are going to see that. And then maybe the best relationship advice on the platform isn't actually shown to the masses because it's just not controversial enough. There's not enough cognitive dissonance and uproar in the comments section, which seems to be what most TikTok videos that appear on people's algorithms are. And
Yeah.
what do you think the alternative is? By the way, guys, we are not relationship experts by any stretch, but what do you think in your experience is the alternative or the better way to get relationship advice and to actually have a better relationship from your own experience?
Again, just to reiterate, I think I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I genuinely believe the best alternative is people close to you in your life, whether that's your parents, whether that's other family members, whether that's a friend of yours. I believe that the people closest to you in your life they want you to succeed. Unlike someone on, let's say, TikTok, who doesn't know you personally, who they have their own agenda. Whereas someone in your life, someone in your family, they can offer you some advice. They can offer you a new outlook that maybe you weren't thinking about before because you were too scared to maybe be open and honest about maybe some of the fears that you have with your partner, or some issues that you see arising, or maybe some red flags. I think a lot of people, red flags especially, I think a lot of people our age in their early 20s, Gen Z, they'll spot what they've seen as red flags on social media in their real life,
Yeah.
and they'll be very tempted to turn and run, to look the other way, to not have to deal with that.
Mm.
And I think there are situations where that is the best thing someone can do. But there are also a lot of other situations where the best thing you can do is just sit down and talk,
Yeah.
or really analyze why something your partner did made you feel this way. Or again, reach out to someone else in your life. Ask
Mm.
them, hey, my partner did this, or I've been noticing this, and ask for some advice. I think you can't beat in-person conversation. I definitely believe that human beings weren't meant to have the world in their hands 24/7.
Yeah. 100%.
And before all of this, there was just people, not to sound like some archaic caveman or anything.
Luddite.
Yeah, exactly. But I think back to my experiences, and I think back to my mom specifically, my dad and my mom, they divorced when I was a baby. And that alone, it's okay. You know some things
Mm.
about how to make a relationship work, how a relationship can fall apart. And some of the best relationship advice I've ever gotten is from my mom. And I think it's important to talk to people who have had negative experiences, positive experiences. Again, I don't want to sound like never go to social media or never talk to people on Reddit or something and ask them for advice, but take it with a grain of salt. There are definitely alternatives out there. And usually that alternative is like sitting right next to you. So yeah.
Yeah. Why can't we just do more analog stuff? Like, the idea of dating apps are just, yeah, they're just not it. And I met my girlfriend in person. I cold approached her, which was very scary, but we did it, and we're still together 2 years later. And I think starting it in person is so beneficial, because like then you can get each other's Instagram and DM when they want to go for a date later down the line. But doing it in person in a nice environment in the broad daylight, not in an alleyway,
Yeah.
is a scary but effective way of meeting someone, or meeting
Mhm.
someone through a friend. These are
Exactly.
the proven, tested, healthy ways of doing stuff
Mhm.
versus the more transactional kind of tit for tat online dating scene. It just never seems to work. And how did you, if I may ask, how did you meet your girlfriend? Was it analog or was it online?
It was analog. It was the classic in person, the only other way I would want it. So I actually went to high school with her, middle school and high school. We never talked in school. I did have a crush on her, man, sophomore year of high school. We had math class together. Her teacher, Miss Bishop. Shout out Miss Bishop.
Yeah.
I sat next to her, and man, I had the biggest crush on her. And it was one of those things where high school, you have a crush on someone. My solution was just don't talk to her
Yeah.
ever.
Good
Just
idea.
pretend like she doesn't exist, actually. So yeah, that went on for about a year, and I had other crushes. I went to college, and I explored. When I had my dating app experiences in college in
Mm.
particular, and that was a nightmare. But yeah, after college, I came back home. The two of us started getting to talking again because we had a mutual friend that sort of brought us together. We became a sort of tight knit little group. And in that time, my feelings came back, and we spent about almost 2 years just getting to know each other. It was a very slow burn. I was upset about it at the time, but now I look back and I'm like, that was totally worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just getting to know each other, being friends, hanging out. And eventually I have to credit Substack for this, but I eventually wrote a Substack piece about her. And it was my first piece that got a lot of attention, because at the time I was averaging maybe like 100 views per piece. I had just started writing, and this piece was like going up to 700 like the second day it was out. And the two of us were out of town together. I was helping her move some stuff out of her college home. And I was like, oh man, this piece is getting more reads. And she's, oh, what is it? And I was like, I'm going to warn you. Like, maybe I should have told you about this before, but it is about you. Obviously, you're not names, none of that, but it is about you. And she wanted me to read it to her. So I read it to her.
Nice.
And since that day, it was like, it's not the day that we got it together officially, but it was definitely the day where it became a reality that the two of us could actually be together.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely good old fashioned human interaction, which thank God, because again, I've had a lot of dating app experience and it's not fulfilling in the slightest personally.
Yeah, I find it quite neurotic. I don't know if that's just my disposition, but even like growing up with Snapchat and Instagram and like DMing like people on there that you're not necessarily like even a thing with, but you might have a crush on, and just like refreshing the page to see if they've opened it, or they leave you on open for 2 minutes. Oh no, they like hate you. Oh no. This is like from like age like 10, 11, 12, 13 onwards. And that's like really like critical years where you're quite, for me personally, I was like quite anxious and like overthinking and stuff like that. So it wasn't as good or ideal in that scenario. And what do you think people miss out on if they do it, or they're just stuck on their phones and stuck on their dating apps and stuck on the situationships on these like social media platforms where you can't really actually tell what the person's feelings are like, and you can't read body language because there's none of it. So it's just really, I guess it's almost like abstract. I used to find myself like jumping to conclusions quicker. Is that something you maybe experience as well versus in person?
Yes, no, for sure. You can't get to know someone fully from a quick, let's say, Tinder match.
Yeah.
You get that brief dopamine hit where it's, oh, we matched. Oh my gosh. But then when it actually comes to starting a conversation with a complete stranger, you often wonder, okay, where do I start? How do I keep the conversation going? How do I get this to turn into a date? Those are like the three things that would always run through my mind.
Yeah.
And that's not a normal way of going about finding someone you want to spend it for people who are looking for long-term partners.
Yeah.
Finding someone to spend years with. I think what people miss out on, it's that human element because, sure, on the other side of the screen, you're talking to a human being, but they're not being honest about who their truest self is, and neither are you. And that's the same can be said about meeting someone in person for the first time. Obviously, people have their walls and their guards, but you get a better idea of who they are. You can judge their character more accurately because, like you said, body language, whether or not they're like leaning in towards you during a conversation or leaning out or crossing their legs or where their eyes are darting towards. You don't get any of that. You could barely even get hints of sarcasm through text. It's
permanent sarcasm.
Yeah, exactly. It's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And that's why, honestly, testament to people who have met their partners on dating apps, especially people who have gone even further and gotten married. I know one couple in particular who's gotten married and they met on Hinge. That is a very difficult thing to do because, again, what you're missing out on, at least initially, is that human element. Because dating apps can, and it's just how the algorithm works, it eventually just feels like a game.
Yeah.
A lot of men in particular feel like they're losing that game because men don't get nearly as many likes or matches. And a lot of women in particular get discouraged or overwhelmed because they get so many likes and they have to sift through these faces. Just both ways. It's not ideal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say.
Yeah, it isn't at all. And going back to the body language thing, you're talking about the different things like the eyes darting, the legs crossing. That's something you would hope young people would be able to learn by just experiencing the analog world, like raw dog. Yeah, just like going up to people and like having conversations like we should be having as human beings. But it brought back a memory of me for a long time when I was like 14, 15, 16, going on these psychology YouTube pages like Psych to Go and the School of Life and being like 5 signs of body language someone has a crush on you, and five signs you're an introvert, or five signs they're pretending to hate you or whatever, because I didn't have the experience in real life, especially with the opposite sex, of understanding their body language and understanding if someone liked me. I don't think going to an all boys school helped in that regard at all during those
Oh,
years.
wow.
Yeah. But like I had to compensate by going on YouTube, which didn't really help. And
Yeah.
the best advice I could give to people younger than us who may be going through that, listening to this, or older, is genuinely just start approaching people, which sounds simple but isn't easy, right?
Yeah. No, that's a scary thing to do, especially for young people. People say this all the time, but COVID really messed a lot of people up,
Yes.
especially our generation. We're so afraid to get rejected, so afraid to feel uncomfortable, so afraid to just talk to another person in real life. And I have felt all of these things. Like
Yes, me too.
I know myself now, dude, even going to a party, knowing that I'm about to interact with a bunch of people that I don't know, it gives me a crazy amount of anxiety.
Mm.
Like I have to hype myself up to do something like that. And I can, at times, I'm even like shaking a little
Mm.
because I'm like, okay, I'm about to put myself out there.
Yeah.
I'm about to be perceived, which a lot of people don't want to be perceived. And yeah, that's just like the best advice I think you can give anyone. It's make a fool of yourself, approach people, keep in mind, do in a sort of a kind, approachable way. Don't be a freak. But yeah, I feel like maybe this sounds hyperbolic, but I feel like it's almost a lost art to
Mm.
just talk to a stranger. One of my favorite cafes nearby, local cafe, I like to people watch. And I noticed that a lot of the older people that come into this cafe will literally start a random conversation with whoever is there
Yeah.
so confidently, without embarrassment, without shame. And 9 times out of 10, that conversation ends up being something that I can see is like somewhat fulfilling in some capacity. And I've never seen that with people my age. And it does upset me. It makes me a little sad. But I will say, I think at least in the last 6 months, I've noticed that there's maybe a desire to go back to the analog,
Yeah.
whether that's people like, oh, I want to get a flip phone or I want to read more. I think people are craving that. People do miss that because without it, there's like a gaping hole that maybe you don't feel until it becomes too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And the rush you get from talking to a stranger is very nice, and it really does boost your confidence. Before, you might be really rusty and just out of practice, and then you just say hello to someone and ask them how they are. I find myself doing it a lot I go to the sauna and steam room quite a lot, and I think that's like the best place for me to do it, and out of everything I do, because it's just everyone's just relaxed and like half naked and just
Yeah.
open to a conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas, I don't know, maybe in some other scenarios like public transport. But then saying that, I remember having a really nice conversation with this, like, again, middle-aged lady on the way back home from university, and we were like halfway through the journey, and she like even offered to buy me something from one of the people's with the food like trolley came past, and I was obviously like, no, it's
Right.
fine. But it's just like you don't realize how nice everyone is until you speak to them. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are missing out on that, and the more we can do it, the better we will feel about ourselves and our lives, because I think that's, like you said, it's a lost art that our generation needs to catch up on. And I hope a lot of people begin to do that. And speaking of friendship, you've like written a few posts and really good essays on friendship. And how do you think friendship changes after university in our 20s?
Ooh. Oh man.
Wait, hold that thought. I'm genuinely so grateful that you've stuck around with us to listen to these fascinating insights from the guest so far. If this episode has given you one piece of knowledge which has helped you understand yourself and the world a little bit better than before, the absolute best way to support us is to pay it forward and hit the share button right now. Don't let this knowledge stay hidden. Please send it to one person who will benefit from this episode. Thank you so much. Let's dive back into the rest of the episode.
Yeah, literally my latest piece that came out Thursday was about, I think, coming to terms with losing people in your life. About maybe 2, 3 years ago, I had my first friend breakup, a falling out with someone that I've been very close to since like eighth grade. And this was junior year, senior year of college. This was a while. And I think that was the first time in my life where I realized, yeah, I'm not going to know these people forever, whether or not that is time apart or living in across the country or having a falling out. All the friends that I've had before aren't going to stick with me in the years to come. And that was something that I didn't really want to reckon with for a long time until somewhat recently. I felt at peace knowing that, okay, sure, I'm not going to know these people forever, but the time that they were in my life was important to me. It shaped me into who I am today. And I think that more than anything is at least what brought me peace. Yeah, friendships are, I think this is just a key thing with relationships in general, whether it's platonic or romantic or familial. It's, how do I word this? Forgive me. I got to think about this for a second. I
No worries.
think when you're young, and I'm going to plagiarize myself a little bit, but I think when you're young, you do want your life to be what in the media or social media, whether
Yeah.
that's, I mentioned an example, whether it's a sitcom episode, something like Friends, something like Frasier, where I grew up watching these things, hoping that in my life, I would have that. But I failed to realize that's not real life. Real life and growing up is growing apart or is maybe maturing faster than someone else
Yeah.
who you used to be close to. And it's also coming to terms with that and accepting that and being okay with that. There's no point in running from that or trying to cling on to something that just isn't meant to be anymore, whether that person has matured faster than you or whether you've matured faster than that person. Either way, it's the same thing. My biggest advice for something like that was to just move on. Look at the people you have in your life now and cherish those people. Really break down what makes certain relationships that you have now so important to you. I think about my best friend now. We've had our ups and downs, especially recently, but he's still my best friend.
Mm.
And he was there for me when I needed him. I'm there for him when he needs me. Same can be said for my girlfriend, who again I was friends with before we actually started dating. Same can be said for a couple other friends of mine. And I think growing up, I realized I would much rather have a small group of amazing, thoughtful
Mm.
people that I can rely on than a lot of friends who aren't going to be there forever. And just, yeah, accepting that. It's totally okay. It's hard to think about it like that in the moment, especially when you're so young, especially when you're a teenager. But I think that's a pretty ubiquitous realization that people have. There's a certain age that you hit where you're like, okay, this is real life. We have jobs, we have rent, we have other things to worry about. And maybe that person you used to see every week, you see twice a year.
Mm.
And that's fine.
Yeah, I think people talk about breakups, they sing about breakups, they write about breakups quite a lot, but a lot of people don't necessarily talk as much about, like you said earlier, a friendship breakup or just slowly distancing naturally away from someone that or group of people that you once spoke a common language with, maybe a
Mhm.
year before, 6 months before, or 5 years before. And what do you think do we miss when we become adults and our friendship group does shrink? And maybe what do we actually benefit from that as well?
I think what we miss is for sure what I missed was that sense of togetherness, that sense of you're with a group of people with maybe similar dispositions and you all came together for a reason, whether that was you guys had the same class, whether that was a mutual understanding of politics or philosophy or whatever it is that brought you together. That sense of not being alone is, I think, what a lot of people crave and what a lot of people miss, especially when that group is no longer together. But a benefit of that, I think, is a maturity. And that isn't to say that the two are totally mutually exclusive. Obviously, there are cases where that just isn't the case, but there is a maturity and an understanding to, okay, I need to build up my own life before I worry about what other people are thinking. For me personally, I think the issue that I found within myself was that I let my life and my actions be dictated by my friends. If maybe I wanted to do something, but it wasn't the opinion of my friend group, I wouldn't do it. And I don't think that's not a healthy way of moving about the world. And I remember even my mom told me in high school, she noticed this about me and she was like, you should fix that. But at the time, I didn't want to listen. And I realized all these years later, I'm like, man, that really was the case. There was a sense of togetherness, sure, but there was also, I had no sense of who I was. I had no personal identity. My identity was with them. And until you separate yourself from that, you don't get to realize who you are. So the biggest benefit, honestly, again, at least for me, was a sense of identity and knowing who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, knowing when to speak up and knowing when to put my foot down on certain personal ideologies that I have that maybe I would have been too scared to vocalize before. Yeah. Yeah. That's my answer.
Yeah, very good answer. And why did you have that tendency to outsource your self-worth? Am I correct in saying
Mm.
that, to the group you were in and your actions
Yeah.
as well? Where do you think that comes from?
I think I've had a lot of time to think about this and I've written about it, a lot of pieces that probably will never see the light of day. But as for the why, it really is because I had this fear, and even to a certain extent now, but a fear of like abandonment or a
Mm,
fear of being alone. I think that's a pretty common fear to have. But depending on the person, that fear can really control your life. And for me, I went to a predominantly white and Asian high school and a very great neighborhood, very safe, but it was a bubble for sure. I realized this, especially when I went to DC for college. I was like, well, there's a whole other world out there that is not my hometown.
yeah.
But yeah, just the fear of being alone. I wanted to be accepted by people. I felt like a black sheep. I was one of the few black Mexican kids at the school. Before I came out as bisexual, I was afraid that doing so would alienate me. And so I was totally willing to do and hang out with whoever if I felt like they were accepting of me,
Mm.
even if fundamentally they weren't. And so there was a level of, there was a lack of self respect there that I think comes with aging. It comes with growing up
Yeah.
because no one knows who they are when they're a kid, as they shouldn't. But yeah, that's where I think that's really where it stemmed from was a fear of abandonment. And post college, these are the sorts of things that one naturally understands, I think, if you're lucky. But yeah, it's a pretty scary thing. Some people now, even I'm 23 right now, some people, 23-year-olds, even older, still haven't had a chance to figure that out. So I'm just grateful that I have. I'm
Mm,
grateful that I have a platform that allows me to reconcile my feelings in real time and talk to people who I don't know who have had similar feelings or have had or are going through the same things. Like my recent Substack posts on friendship, people in the comments were saying like, "Oh man, this couldn't have come out at a better time. I'm literally going through something exactly like this right now." And a lot of those people are young, people who are like 17, 18, figuring it out. And I think for a lot of those people, it is, you just don't want to be alone.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I did a bit of a deep dive onto your first few posts, and you actually mentioned that feeling of loneliness and abandonment when your
Mm.
mother left and your auntie died. And how old were you again when that happened? Was this like when you were a kid or when you were a teenager?
I was 17, I think. 17. Damn. Yeah. 17 or 18. Man, that
Yeah.
was a while ago.
And what did that teach you, that event, that era? Because you were speaking about how you feel alone. And since that post, it was only, I think it was did you post that in April, right? A few months ago?
Yeah.
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 So do you always have this fundamental, deep rooted feeling of loneliness even in your
Mhm.
happiest of moments, because it's something that I think I sometimes have in a way where I think I've heard philosophers talk about it. You never feel fully understood, even by maybe the closest person in your life. You always
Mhm.
feel like personally there's some distance because they can't be in your head. It'd be impossible for them
Mhm.
to do that. So how do you feel in regards to that, in regards to loneliness? How are you dealing with your loneliness at the moment since that post?
I was having a conversation with my mom about this not that long ago, actually, because the two of us are very similar. I grew up with her. She was a single mom. I spent like 90% of my time with her. And I had a post, I forget when I published it, but I talk about how, like you just said, even in my happiest moments, there's still an air of melancholy there. And that doesn't mean I'm an unhappy person. It just means that fundamentally there's a part of me that I think fundamentally there's a part of me that sort of holds on to the parts of my life that I don't look back on very fondly. One of them being my aunt passing away. That was the first time in my life I realized that people go. No
Mm.
one's there forever. The first time in my life I realized I have to come to terms with loss. And so when my mom she went into town for a work trip and like shortly after her passing, I was completely alone, and that was the first time where that loneliness felt like almost crippling. Like I was having a panic attack. It was so bad. And I went to therapy and I talked to people. That's when I started writing a lot. And that has helped me more than anything, I believe, is whether it's fiction or personal essays. That has been so incredible for me. But with handling loneliness, especially now, there's no surefire way of handling something like that. But I think the best way for me is finding things in my life to look forward to, especially now. I don't know how political you want to get with the state of the US in particular, and a lot of the fears that I have, and a lot of the fears that so many of my peers have. It's really hard to find things to look forward to find things in your life that keep you going. And it's super easy to like let all the horrible, can I cuss?
You can.
Horrible, shitty, awful emotions to take over. And finding the little things, whether that's like an upcoming movie or an upcoming album or seeing your best friend or seeing your girlfriend or seeing your boyfriend, those little things keep me going, even when I feel depressed or even when I feel lonely. There are moments when I'm with my girlfriend and in the moment, I will feel lonely, not because of her, because I'd rather feel lonely with her than feel lonely alone, but because that's just how I naturally am. And my mom, she said she's the same exact way. Like her entire life since she was a kid, there has been a level of sadness in her that she said she thinks she just transferred to me. And whether that's the case or not,
Might be
that's not
genetic.
her fault. Yeah, it might be genetic, thanks. But there are benefits to that as well.
Yeah.
Not to sound like the tortured artist, but I do think my
Makes
best
you a good
writing
writer.
comes from,
Yeah.
yeah, it comes from my worst moments. But yeah, there really isn't one way to handle something like that. I think a good rule of thumb is, yeah, finding things in your life that you are excited about. Get
Mm.
excited about something, because that has been pretty priceless, I think, for me.
Mm.
For me personally, it's been movies and music and stuff like that that's always something that I will look forward to. Yeah.
And if you could define loneliness for you, what would that definition be? And how does it feel if you can't define it?
Ooh, I could ooh, that's a good question. If I had to define it for me, it would be it would be a farce feeling of of just being alone. That might sound very simple and just duh, but I say farce because I think 9 times out of 10 that isn't true. People often feel alone and they have people in their life that maybe they're too afraid to reach out to.
Mm.
People in their life who I think if they did reach out to, they would be pleasantly surprised by how they handle your emotions and the sort of care that they provide. I think loneliness is an amazing trick. I think I think it's the most damaging feeling one can have. And it's damaging because you can feel lonely, but you really aren't alone. But it really convinces you that you are.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that would be my definition.
Is there any misunderstanding in there between maybe how people view you in the outside world, how people perceive you versus how you actually feel, or between your feelings, between your thoughts in the world, between even people really close to you in the world? Does that ever come to play? Would that be in the definition, or is misunderstanding, feeling misunderstood, is that a separate thing, do you think, to actual loneliness, in your opinion?
I think it can be a separate thing. I think there are a lot of people who feel lonely because they feel misunderstood. I've definitely felt that way. So it's one of those things where they can definitely go hand in hand. Someone feels misunderstood, someone feels maybe woefully misunderstood, and so they feel alone. But I think what happens there is that if there are people in one's life who seem to misunderstand who they are as a person, I think that's when one needs to come to terms with and maybe realize that there are certain people in their life that they could or should move on from. Going back to moving on, growing up. I think sometimes misunderstanding comes from a lack of maturity, maybe
Mm,
even a lack of empathy, which I think
mm.
is in short supply nowadays. Yeah, I think that's also a good question. I haven't actually thought about that thoroughly in that way, misunderstanding.
Write a post on
Yeah, no, I'm like thinking now, I'm
it.
like really brainstorming. That's an interesting
I'd read it.
perspective. Yeah, I might have to think about that some more.
Mm. You mentioned empathy being on a short supply, running on fumes per se. Is that just online, or is that in real life? And is that because of the online space, or is like, what do you think the reasons are that you think that's the case? Why do you think that's the case?
I do think it's online. It really is social media. Like I said earlier, the whole world in the palm of your hands. I think you can see that in the current administration in the US, other dictatorships around the world, the rise of authoritarian governments doesn't just happen out of nowhere.
No.
And I think regimes like that are run by a lack of empathy. Not to put all the blame, obviously, on the people, because that's not true. But I think social media really does fan those flames of it's hard to feel empathetic to other people's plights and traumas when every single day you are exposed to endless plights and endless traumas to the point where you get so desensitized to how awful the world can be. And all one wants to think about is how can I myself be happy, which
Mm,
is a valid thought to have.
mm,
But how can I benefit from this or that? How can I be happy? How is my happiness more important than
mm.
other people's unhappiness? And that's a scary thing. And it's a frustrating thing. Man, if anyone wants to get upset, all you need to do is just look at the comment section of literally anything nowadays. And it's usually pretty awful. Yeah,
Why don't we just
empathy
quit
really
it?
is
Why
what
why don't we just not go on social media? What
that
are
would
we
be nice.
what are we missing out on by not going on social media? Is it just dependency, or is it something like you're just putting your head in the sand, you ostrich? Like, what's the benefit of staying on there if this is the case?
I think it's just like the status quo. Like it's the norm now. It's almost like if you're not on social media, what are you doing? Whether that's professionally, I think of my professional aspirations and social media is in the equation.
Yeah, yeah.
Even when I was in college, I was taking a journalism class where on the first day, my professor was like, okay, if you don't have a Twitter or an X account, make one. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
I really don't want to do that. I actually didn't end up doing it.
good.
So, that whether or not that affected my grade, that's
Yeah.
something else. But yeah, I think I don't want to say it's too late to quit social media because I'll never say never. Maybe at some point in the future, it'll be like a Dune situation where all AI is like evaporated or whatever, and people go back a few hundred years. But it is hard to quit something like that, because then I know there are a lot of people who feel left out, fear of missing out, FOMO.
Mm.
There are a lot of people who need social media, whether that's usually for work or professional stuff, or building a brand or being an influencer. It's like being in a toxic relationship. What's bad for you, you know that every day your mental health is like slowly deteriorating.
Yeah, chipping away.
Yeah, chipping away, but you can't leave, because man, those good moments are so good. Wow, I just saw this awesome video of, I don't know, some new Frankenstein edit on TikTok. I'm like, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I wish it was so simple to just
Mm.
quit, but yeah, I think we're past the point where someone can do that and not have that even negatively affect their day-to-day life.
Could you like post and not use it personally? Could you just instead of being used by it, you're actually using it by creating it? 'Cause that's what I do. Other than like sometimes
Mm,
trying to find people on YouTube or on Substack, like I've found that to be really good, like really
mhm,
good, just for in terms of mental health and like clarity and focus and stuff. But then it depends what you're trying to do. Because then if you're writing or if you want to be a creator and you're doing it on what's in vogue right now, like what's the trending topic, then you're going to have to be like knees deep or neck deep in it. So it's really
mhm,
context dependent, but I think we could try. And because like we were saying about having a small group of friends, for example, like you can still talk to them on message or on text message or on WhatsApp, and you can still go to the movies almost like the old school way now, going to the cinema, for
right,
example. But then I guess it's a trade off between how much you enjoy what the algorithm shows you. Like if you really enjoy that Frankenstein edit, that might be too
right.
much to lose. It might be too
Yeah,
much of a loss aversion.
yeah,
But
yeah.
personally, like I found using it instead of maybe consuming it has been really beneficial for my mental health.
But you know what? I think that comes from a certain level of discipline
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
one needs to have.
Yeah.
A certain level of discipline that a lot of people don't have,
Mm,
myself included. Outside of Substack, I work in marketing, excuse me, and specifically social media, email marketing.
mm,
So even when I'm not writing or posting my work on social media, I literally work in social media. All my
mm.
time is spent in Canva and Instagram
Yeah.
and Meta ads. And even at work, I'll have to log on Instagram, post something on the company account. But then I get distracted. I'll see something that like catches my eye.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man. And so that's the level of discipline that I think everyone can benefit from. How one gets there, I
Mm.
have no idea. Maybe you have to have a TED talk on that.
I'm sure there's plenty.
But yeah,
None of them have worked yet.
yeah, I haven't watched any. Maybe I should, but yeah, not letting yourself be used by social media is definitely easier said than done.
Yes.
But definitely
Mm.
props to people who have built a platform on social media but can still disconnect themselves from it. I know there are a few celebrities that I know of who have done the same thing, where they have no social media presence, but they're everywhere. So I guess that would be the ideal. That would be a good balance. But yeah, that takes work.
Oh,
Uh,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's not, it's like an overnight thing as well, where you just switch your brain off. It's like progressively underloading it, removing it from
Hmm.
your home screen and then removing it from your phone and then like only using it on your like browser and stuff. It's
Hmm.
not like an overnight thing where you just go cold turkey. And I think having that fixation on creating rather than consuming helps. I feel like if you weren't wanting to create stuff, then it wouldn't be as easy because like obviously you're
Hmm.
spending a lot of your time creating posts and scheduling stuff anyway. You're like putting your energy out there onto it. I think
Hmm.
it's definitely harder. One, if you work for a social media marketing agency, and two,
Yeah.
if you're not trying to create something. But do you ever
Right.
find yourself in this like tension, this like limbo of where you're consuming it and you're enjoying it, and then maybe you see something negative and it upsets you, and then you realize, oh, maybe this is distracting me from the writing I could be doing, for example. Is how do you deal with that ebb and flow of motivation and distraction when it comes to you and your Substack writing?
That happens all the time, especially because a lot of my writing on Substack is culture writing. It's
Mm.
about the latest stuff that's happening, whether it's upcoming movie, whether that's music. I've written a lot about music. It almost feels impossible to not let myself feel upset when I am doing research for my next writing project. But for me personally, I think I try to use those feelings in my writing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, look, if I'm going to feel angry or depressed, I might as well make something of it. And in those moments, I've written posts about more political posts, or I've written about
Tom Cruise.
maybe Tom Cruise. Oh man, that was so fun.
I
That
love
was
that
so
one.
fun
That
to
was
write
so
about.
good.
Yeah. What an interesting man. What a crazy guy. But yeah, I try to find some sort of angle, some sort of way to make those feelings that maybe feel unproductive as productive as possible. Because it really is impossible for me to scroll through social media, to whether I'm doing research for a piece or not, and to not get upset about something. That's why I think that disconnect is very helpful and necessary for one's own mental health. But yeah, I just try to use it in my writing as much as I can. And sometimes I don't want to, because sometimes I actually don't want to write about something and keep exploring those feelings. Because then even if I think the piece is fantastic, I still feel like shit afterwards. I think it really is like what I deem productive or necessary to explore. Maybe a sort of non-answer, but that something like that I think definitely goes like person to person. Yeah.
Yeah. And it must be like, how does it feel if you have the feeling? Because it almost sounds like alchemy. You're turning something that's not good, it's negative, it can almost be useless, like just this feeling of anger, into something that is really valuable, which is a Substack post, which people can relate to and which maybe you can get off your chest. But why does that sometimes still linger after the post? What's still left? Do you think there's still something left to say? Or is it just, it just takes a while for the feeling to pass, the emotion to pass? Do you think how do you think about that? The times where you do write a great post and then you still feel the same afterwards?
Yeah. That's a good question, because yeah, I've actually never been asked something like that, especially in the lens of, is there still something else to say? I think there's always something to say. For example, I've written about love a lot on my Substack. That is, I think, what the majority of my audience is there for. And one might think at some point writing about something like that gets tired, or like, what else can you say about it that you haven't already said? But there is always something to say about any given topic. All you need is a new perspective. There are billions of people on this planet. There are billions of perspectives. And so if I write something and I have these lingering feelings, whether it's positive or negative, I know that it's because I can explore that again later. And I also know, on a more logistical level, it's the amount of time I've spent writing that specific piece. So I post once a week every Thursday. And so I'm working on a whole piece for an entire week. That piece is on my mind every day. And if I'm writing about something that isn't really fun to talk about, I'm just thinking about that every single day for a week. And then I still think about it after I post it, because then people are reading it and interacting with it and leaving comments and sharing it.
Twisting the
And
knife.
so no, exactly. No, exactly. Twisting the knife. And I'm glad they do. I'm grateful, but it hurts sometimes, because even when I'm working on my next post, the previous one is still there, especially now that I'm getting consistently like thousands of reads and views. It's just more people reminding me of who I was a week ago, because every week I'm a little different. Every week I have something different to say, even if what I'm saying is on the same topic I wrote about maybe a month ago. So yeah, there's always something to say, and those feelings always linger. That isn't a bad thing, I think. I think there's a certain level of emotional maturity one needs to handle that. And I will say, I think I am an emotionally mature person. I couldn't have said the same maybe 2 years ago, but yeah, there's always something to say. I will die on that hill.
Yeah. And that begs me to ask, how do you come up with the topic for the week? There's always something to say. So I assume there'd be at least a few things floating around in your cranium that could be potential things to talk about, things to write about. So how do you decide on what to write, and what does that look like? You're saying you're doing it every day. You're thinking about it every day. Do you have a certain structure that you follow by for each post, or is there a certain rule you follow? Like, how does it work? Or is it just pure spontaneity?
Sometimes it's spontaneity, but I do like to keep a pretty tight schedule. It's just easier for me with my job, and because with my job too, I do a lot of writing as well. And if I don't have a locked in schedule, I just wouldn't get anything done. But I have on my notes app, I have a Substack folder with just any idea. If I'm out doing something, having dinner, hanging out with friends, if there's even a moment where I think about something that I think I can explore later, I'll write it in my notes app and I'll come back to it later. But in terms of picking topics for me to write about, it's really entirely dependent on what inspires me. I definitely believe that to be successful, at least on Substack, it isn't to write about the things that you think other people are going to enjoy. It's to write about things that you enjoy. It's finding your niche. And so I try every time I start something new to think about how it affects me, whether or not I would want to talk about this specific subject for 2 hours. And that comes from books, that comes from movies, that comes from music, that comes from whatever other content I'm consuming. Surprisingly, I've realized mostly music. Like I'll be listening to a song and I'll hear a specific lyric and then something in my brain will click and then I'll write something or I'll start working on something. That's why a lot of my posts, I have
the song
little
at the bottom.
quotes. Yeah. And the song on the bottom.
Yeah.
Songs that inspired that post or songs that inspired maybe not even the post, but the feeling that came from the post. So yeah, it's not very spontaneous, but that's why I think it's important on another note to consume valuable content.
Yeah.
Specifically, going back to analog, that books are so important. I really believe that you can't be a good writer if you aren't a reader. And there have been plenty of times where I've been reading something. Right now I'm reading The Woman in White because I saw Guillermo del Toro had an interview where he was recommending the book. And I love Gothic literature. But a lot of the times if I'm reading something and I read a certain passage that really resonates with me, then I will build an entire post around that. And I'll try to spin it in a way that's culturally relevant, that's timely, because I did study journalism after all, and timeliness is important. Yeah, that's my long-winded answer.
It's really good. No, really good. And I think having that spin on things is very important. We have such a recency and novelty bias. You have to do that to engage people. And I think that's why your posts are so effective, because they interweave a lot of different eras and feelings and current affairs all into one succinct piece of writing, which people can relate to a lot. And I want to ask you something, and it's, what is one question you wish someone would ask you but never has?
Oh, wow. One question I wish someone would ask me. Oh man, I'm going to sound like such a dork. I'm going to sound so, I've never been asked why. I don't know if this, oh my God, I'm embarrassed even talking about it. Fuck it, whatever. I wish people would ask me more about why 21 Pilots is one of the greatest bands of all time.
My sister would probably agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about 21 Pilots. So they were like when was it? Like, was it 2015, 2016, right?
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. They're literally the biggest band in the world at one point.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard them for a long time. What's happened?
What's happened? Oh boy. A lot's happened. But yeah, that's around the time I started listening to them. I was telling my girlfriend about this actually. My dad is actually the one who showed me my first 21 Pilot song.
Wow.
I don't get along with my father. We don't have a good relationship, but he did give me that.
Yeah.
And man, it's funny because a lot of their music, especially recently, has inspired my writing, because I feel like a lot of their music just lyrically resonates with me, at least over the last like 5 years. 2015, 2016, I think there's an argument to be said that
is their worst era.
Yeah. Definitely don't look back too fondly on that era. But there's a certain level of growth that they've had, especially in the writing and the instrumentation, that I think happens when they bowed out of the spotlight. And their last, it's like 3 or 4 albums in particular over the last not 10 years, way less than 10 years, like 6 years, has just really hit. And it really comes from again, what I write about the human condition,
Mm.
mental health, vices, acceptance, anti-government, religion. Surprisingly, they're both of them are they're a duo. They're Christians. I'm not religious whatsoever, but I find that even when they write and talk about religion, it resonates with me because they struggle with that. They struggle with their religion. They struggle with their personal views, and I think now more than ever, it's like incredibly interesting to listen to people who are Christians in the US, who are anti-government, and how they deal with that. So that's another thing. But yeah, they were like the biggest duo in the world. And now they're still pretty popular. I think their last album went #1
Oh, okay.
on the Billboard charts for like
Live under a
2
rock.
weeks.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just me. Maybe I just have been living under a rock since 2016.
No, to be fair, this is their first #1 in 10 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They haven't hit the same since 2015, but yeah, they still make music. I think it's mature now. It's thoughtful. It just sounds good. I'm like, if it sounds good, I'm gonna like it. Yeah, there's so many reasons. I just love those guys.
Yeah.
And it is surprising how much of their music informs my writing, I
Mm.
realize.
Yeah. And you love 21 Pilots, but there seems to be one person in particular that you have a more complicated relationship with. It's a celebrity. It's not a family member, but it's
Oh,
but by the name of Tom Cruise.
oh,
So I read your post on Tom Cruise and I found it
yeah,
really interesting. And
yeah.
you seem to be, I don't want to say infatuated, that's probably the wrong word, but you're very intrigued by Tom Cruise. Can you explain that? Mm.
Yeah. Oh man, that's actually one of my favorite pieces I've written. It's before I had a bigger audience. And that's honestly the kind of piece I would even republish it now.
Mm.
I'm like, you guys need to read this. Infatuation isn't even the wrong word. I am genuinely fascinated by that man because he's such I watched a video essay on him on specific performances that he's had in a movie called Magnolia, which I don't know if
Yeah.
you've
I've not really,
seen that, but
I want to watch it now after your post though.
it's a fantastic movie. It is like incredibly long, so you need to mentally prepare for that. But this video essay was talking about how in Magnolia, that's his most real, arguably his best performance. And that's because his character in the movie, his character's life was almost like copy paste Tom Cruise's life, which is a weird coincidence. Not even a coincidence. Tom Cruise knew what he was doing. He
Yeah.
accepted that role for a reason. And you watch the movie and you do realize like that is his best performance. That is his most real, raw, emotional performance. But then everything after that, not everything, but especially the last like 10, 15 years, he's like an action icon. And I find it so interesting that someone with such talent and such a troubled like past in a strange relationship with Scientology
Yeah.
and some abusive tendencies and like relationships. He's a man who, if I maybe knew him personally or knew someone like him, I would think stay away from that guy.
Yeah.
Like he's weird. He's a bad guy. But then for some reason, when there's a new Tom Cruise movie coming out, I'm like, I gotta watch it. And I think part of that is maybe nostalgia. I grew up watching Tom Cruise movies, especially with my dad in particular. But then a big part of that now is like, yeah, I guess an infatuation with who he is. He's like an enigma. He used to be, I think, in his younger years, in his Magnolia era, more transparent with his past and his emotions. But there was a certain point where he stopped that and he stopped being Tom Cruise, like the human being, and he started being Tom Cruise, the movie star, icon, untouchable legend. And I think it's interesting people's relationships, like consumers' relationships with celebrities like that, how much people are willing to look past because it's Tom Cruise. Yeah, what an interesting guy. I really enjoyed writing about that. Man, if I could meet him in real life, that would be such a surreal experience. I don't even know what I would say. He's such a anyway.
What's the dark side of Tom Cruise that we don't get to see?
I wish I knew, man. I think little glimmers of it sometimes. I don't know
Yeah.
if you ever listened to that leaked audio of him like yelling at a film crew because they weren't wearing their masks properly during COVID. Totally valid crash out. I'm like, they need to know that if they're on a film set during COVID, they need to like take this proper precautions. But the anger in his voice, it was like chilling. If you listen to the audio, oh man, like actual shivers, knowing that this is real. This is him at his most authentic, and it's anger. Like,
Why do you think it's this most
um,
authentic though? What leads you to believe that?
I think a lot of people, I don't want to sound presumptuous or I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I think how people act when they're angry is a real show of character.
Mm.
I think, at least in my experience, when I'm angry, how I react, I can recognize that it's not great. Like for me personally, for example, when I feel like I've genuinely been wronged or I'm really angry and it takes a lot to get me there, it's almost regardless of who was right or wrong, I become the bad guy because of how I react, which is very hurtful. Like I use my words to like really dig deep and that hurts people. And I think that is a real show of character, how one reacts to shitty circumstances and whether or not someone reacts in a productive way or not. And I think, yeah, that's people at their most vulnerable at the very least. Maybe not their most real, but they're most vulnerable for sure because all the guards are down, all the walls are down.
Yes.
It's just pure human emotion. So you listen to something like that leaked audio and having never heard someone like that speak in that way, it's like almost a scary thing because it's a part of that person who you realize, oh shit, like this is in them. It can come out at any time.
And
Um,
is that what drives them as well? That deep instinct. I've read quite a few biographies, and a lot of people are driven by darkness
mhm,
versus compared to light. It's really noticeable. It's a common thread.
yeah, it's, I get that to a certain extent that goes back to, I think that goes back to the quality of work people put out when they're depressed or sad or angry, which usually happens to be, I think, they're most honest. And authenticity and honesty in art, I think, is the best kind of art because you're not putting on a show for anyone. You're not trying to build a specific perception of you. You're just you're letting your emotions dictate your art. And yeah, unfortunately, that usually comes with anger or
Mm.
sadness or jealousy or any of the emotions that people feel that they want to run away from, but they inevitably can't. So yeah, maybe authentic is the wrong word, but definitely they're most vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think anger is, yeah, people at their most raw.
Should that be removed though? We try and avoid these emotions and we condemn people for those emotions. And obviously they do something that hurts someone or fucks something up, then obviously that's terrible. But in general, these negative emotions we're so scared of, they often bring out a really productive side in people, really relatable side in people, or even a closer bond. If you're sad and you tell someone you're sad, that obviously strengthens the bond between people. So do you think there's a way for us to embrace these negative emotions and try instead of trying to run away from them? Or is it just a feature of having the negative emotion? You just want to get away from it. That's just how we
Mm.
react to them.
I think there's a way to embrace those emotions. And I think one should embrace those emotions. I always think back to that line in Call Me by Your Name. I don't know if you ever read the book or watched the movie, but
No.
there's a specific line from Elio, the protagonist's father, where I'm not going to say it verbatim. I can't think of it on the top of my head, but something along the lines of not subduing your emotions, not quelling your emotions, living through it, feeling everything that you need to feel, even if it's the worst feeling in the world, because it would be a waste. It would be a waste of time and a waste of energy to try to bury that stuff. And I read that book in high school, and I remember that even then, just really hitting for me,
Mm.
and that really affected my grieving process with when my aunt passed away. That affected my first breakup. That affected every shitty thing to happen in my life. I think back to, okay, I know I'm going to feel awful for the next maybe 6 months or so, but I can't ignore those feelings.
Mm.
And that's where my writing always came in, because it allowed me to feel everything that I was supposed to feel, but also not cross that line of romanticizing my grief or
Yeah.
romanticizing my trauma, which I think a lot of people do, unfortunately.
Mm.
And there's a lot of people who don't know where that line is. And there's some people who may even see my work and think that I'm romanticizing my own trauma. And maybe that's the case, but something like that I think comes from people's just personal experience. And yeah, I don't know. I think it is necessary to just let that stuff live in you.
Mm.
Because man, like how can you imagine how boring it would be to navigate the world where everybody is like trying to be as happy go lucky as possible?
Isn't that
That
America?
would be, yeah, no, and look at us now. That's, man, that would be a sad thing to not let yourself be honest with
Mm.
who you are, with what you're feeling. Yeah.
I think we grow when there's a lot of pressure or negative energy on us as well. I think it if life becomes too comfortable, then we actually just cease to grow.
Mhm.
If it becomes too easy, it becomes too idle. And I think obviously you don't want to purposely attract or look out for these negative feelings. But if you're going through something and it's happened and you can't do anything about it, then it's probably, in hindsight, looking back, will be a good thing, but in the moment is like horrible. And I think that's where your writing really stands out, is it's like you're just writing about how you feel. And yeah, you can
Mhm.
look back at it 6 months time and be like, oh yeah, I was feeling like that and now I don't. That's great. I've moved on. But again, it's sometimes it's okay for it to linger and for you to go back onto it and keep writing about it, because let's be real, like even if the emotion you're feeling gets caused by a different event, is still a similar feeling, right? And there's a reason why we have quite a few core emotions: depression, anxiety, sadness, lust, joy, like fulfillment. It's because they happen in everyone and they often repeat themselves no matter what point of life you're at. Do you think it might be a good idea to be stoic about it? Or do you think
Mhm.
it's a good idea to just embrace it and let all the emotions come out on the page? How would it affect your writing if you became just a pure stoic and was like, I'm just going to choose how to react?
Yeah. Oh man, I think my writing would get a lot less relatable and
Mm,
a lot less interesting for a lot of
yeah.
people. People practice stoicism, and for those it may work, but I think the vast majority of people are messy. People are messy. People can be thoughtless. People, again, going back to infallibility, no
Mm,
one's perfect. So I couldn't imagine trying to practice something like that and having that stoic disposition translate into my writing in a way that is interesting and relatable and as thoughtful as I want it to be.
yeah.
And that's why I've chosen to embrace my emotions. Even if there are people in my life, even family, who think I'm too emotional, too sentimental, too whatever. I'd much rather be known for being too emotional than being known as someone who tries to bury all of that. Because I look back to people like my father who have buried their emotions their entire life. And that comes, I think, from part of it, a generational thing. But the two of us don't get along for a reason. And a lot of that stems from how he handles real emotions. So again, there's that line of embracing your emotions and then letting it control you. And
Yes.
it is an incredibly difficult thing to do, to not let it control you. And that's where outside help comes in handy, whether that's therapy. Honestly, therapy hits. Sometimes you got to find, it takes a while to find a good therapist, someone that works with you, but that's why stuff like that works. That's why talking to close friends, that's why talking to family, you just got to talk to people and keep yourself grounded. That's why you got to stay off TikTok, man.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
get really stupid myself on TikTok.
It's full circle. Full circle.
Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't say people should be stoic.
Mm.
I think what people need to do is learn how to handle their own emotions in a way that's healthy for them. Because how I handle my emotions is not going to work for someone else. I can't go on here and say, hey guys, if you want to be emotionally mature and happy, write about this every single day, watch this, do this. Because for someone else, that might depress them even more. I know plenty of people who say they don't like to journal because journaling is like reliving their
Mm.
worst moments. And that's totally valid. So, yeah, finding a way to embrace your emotions without letting it control your life is difficult, but it's an experience that I think everybody needs
Mm.
to undergo at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a tightrope we're all wobbling on constantly, all shifting from either side.
Mhm.
In terms of going back to your growth we were speaking about earlier, the sharp exponential curve you've had over the past month or less, which is really great. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank
For
you.
those who want to grow on Substack and are a bit of a Luddite when it comes to Substack, like me, who don't know how to use it, how have you found effective ways to grow on it? What's the most effective way? Because I used to just think it was an email marketing kind of platform where you just send your essays, but then I realized there's this entire algorithm and explore page. So I know you've done
Right.
I think a collaboration post on how to grow on Substack before. So what's the
Yeah.
number one, number or three key simple things someone can do to grow their audience on there?
First of all, definitely consistency. Even if it feels like you're shouting into the void and no one's listening, consistency is key. When I first started, I was posting 2 articles a week. And I experimented with different days to see which days got more engagement, which days not so much. But I was posting twice a week and I was posting notes every day. Notes, for anyone who doesn't know on Substack, it's basically think of it like Twitter. You see the Twitter feed and people have their little tweets. Notes are literally just like that. They show up in the main feed, you scroll through them, people say whatever they want. So, yeah, consistency is for sure the key because eventually whatever you're talking about will find an audience. And that I think is the second thing is the content that you're putting out. I mentioned this before. Don't put out content that you think other people are going to want to
Mm.
read because there are countless critical essays about Sabrina Carpenter or Chapel Rowan or all these other things. And if you think, oh, okay, these posts are getting thousands of reads, I should also put out a Sabrina Carpenter critique. You're probably not going to get the reaction that you want because those are out there already.
Mm.
So just be real with what you want to post because it will find an audience.
Mm.
And I think what matters the most on Substack for growth is whether or not your excitement about a subject or your passion comes through in your writing or your video content or your podcast or whatever it is. Because people are attracted more than anything to that authenticity. So that would be the second thing, I think. And the third thing is, yeah, collaborations, interacting with other creators. I've collaborated with 2 other creators. And then I also collaborated with, it was a work related post about the Substack algorithm. I literally just created the work Substack like not that long ago. But oh man, yeah, talking to people on the platform is so important because you never know. And this isn't to say, oh, only talk to people because it'll be beneficial to
Yeah.
you. No, that's wrong. But it is important to keep in mind that, yeah, you can build friendships with people on the platform. And hey, at some point in the future, if they want to collab with you or they want to do something with you, it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
And there's one particular account that I collaborated with. Her name's Hannah, fantastic writer. She's been my number one fan day one. She's always restacking or reposting my stuff. But stuff like that, it's like finding a small group of people on the platform who are reliable, who are helpful, who are fun, who are kind, and just sticking by them. Don't switch up on your day ones.
Mm.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
So, man, there are so many other factors, I think, to growing. On a more technical level, if anyone is interested in Substack or wants to grow, notes are so important.
Mm.
Notes are like bite-sized They're just a very fast and easy way for a random person scrolling through the feed to find out who you are.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of humor? Are you articulate? Do you care about climate change? Do you care about politics? Notes are like tiny little windows to who you are. And if someone is interested in your note, they will visit your profile and then they'll see your long form content. And that's when they judge whether or not they want to subscribe.
Yeah.
Notes are the reason why I've grown so much, especially the last 2 weeks, because I posted a note basically saying, okay, here are little screenshots of my favorite pieces that I've ever written. And I didn't post that note with the desire or the intention of getting 300K views on the note and 3K subscribers. I just posted it because I'm like, hey, if anyone wants to read these pieces, there they are. And it turns out that people did want to read the pieces because that note gave people an opportunity to get a little glimpse of my writing style, the themes that I like to explore, who I am, people in my life, like my girlfriends, who I posted a couple of notes about before. And yeah, people are attracted to real human beings. And I think Substack is a pretty fantastic place for that. That isn't to say Substack is like some sort of a special social media platform, because at the end of the day, it's still social media
Yeah.
and it's not perfect and it has its issues for sure. But yeah, for anyone wanting to grow, just find your niche, keep posting consistently, and make some friends on the platform. It's super easy to make friends on there. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah. It's really good advice, really good advice. And how often are you posting notes per day? Is it like once a day, 10 times a day?
That is more spontaneous.
Yeah.
So for sure, I'm posting one note a day because it's super fast, takes no thought at all. Literally not. That's why notes are so great.
Yeah.
But if I feel like throughout the day, if something happens to me or like I'm reminded of something and I just want to say something, I'll post multiple notes. So that is more, you can be more flexible with that. For long form posts in particular, I think it is good to just post at most 2 times a week. Because one, you don't want to bombard your subscribers with posts, 3 to 4 posts a week, because they also subscribe to other people. They're not going to get to all of your posts every week. So when I started out with 2 posts a week, that was working for me. Again, I was getting like 100 subs a month. But then once I hit 500 subs, I stopped myself, or I limited myself to 1 post a week, which has been working pretty great because, yeah, you post once a week. All my subscribers, they get to read whoever else they're subscribed to, and they get to just read the 1 post that I have, and that's enough. But yeah, notes, honestly, you can be pretty spontaneous with that, but I would recommend at least one note a day.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, I've been trying this tactic on TikTok where I just post like a selfie and then I'll just find like a philosophy quote or like a self-improvement quote. And it's like half like sarcastic, satirical and half true. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking like, maybe if I like do that on Substack and just have the picture of me and then the quote, or like even just like a quote from the podcast or a clip, that might be quite an effective way of using notes, because I think I put an episode on notes and it actually got engagement. I'm used to just getting the people from my email list reading it and no one on the web page. And also, yeah, if you want to meet new people who are genuinely like-minded to you and curious, I think Substack is the place. Like speaking to you today, but then also speaking to other people, like people do respond to your messages, whereas on Instagram or on TikTok, they either don't check DMs or it doesn't go straight into their inbox because it's a request page, or they just have an ego or whatever. Substack just seems to be right now the perfect, like in the, like this perfect little niche where it's not niche, like the perfect middle ground in a way where people are writing, creating their own stuff, but also the work on there doesn't seem to be, at least from what I've seen, that too brain rot or too degenerate. It just seems really genuine, authentic and curious. And the people on there are just these introspective people. So it's definitely the place to go if you're that kind of ilk, I'd say.
And another thing is people are still catching up to Substack.
Yeah.
It's still fairly new.
Yeah.
Like even, I think 2 or 3 days ago, Charlie XCX just joined Substack and she just posted her first piece. And it was genuinely interesting because it's indicative to like where the culture is shifting. People say journalism is dying, which is true. Substack, though, is growing.
Yeah.
And companies are starting to catch on, celebrities are starting to catch on. And so I think now is like the perfect time.
Yeah.
It's not too late, I think, yet for before it gets oversaturated. Something like Instagram, which is incredibly hard now to grow an audience on Instagram because the sheer amount of content there, the sheer amount of profiles. It's like, how do you break through that noise? Whereas Substack is in a perfect spot right now
Yeah.
where a lot of people are joining, it's getting more attention, but it's not too much yet. So also for anyone interested, you should read that Charlie XUX post. It's awesome. I didn't realize she was like that.
Oh, it's getting the celebrity
Um,
thing. Give us a quick synopsis summary of it, but the general premise compared to,
General premise, I think what I will say without spoiling anything, because it really is a fantastic post. It is a very thoughtful, human, vulnerable piece about what's going on in her head
Mm.
with the creative process, just mental health in general, where she's at. And the fantastic thing about it is she didn't put her face anywhere on her Substack. It's not, her face isn't her profile picture. It's not on her publication. It's not in the article. It's like, it's just her name, links to her Instagram or socials or whatever, and then the writing. And I was reading and I was just like, wow, this is, if Tom Cruise did something like that, then that'd be pretty awesome because I get a glimpse into like his brain.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely recommend that. Yeah.
Awesome. Christian Brewster, ladies and gentlemen. Christian, thank you so much, man. This was really good. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And I absolutely love your work and encourage everybody to check it out. Where can people go if they want to find your work if they haven't caught on already?
People can check out my Substack. It's called Interrupted. You go to my Substack, my other social media links are in my profile. But yeah, that's where I'll direct people to. That's what I want people to see.
Awesome.
But thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here. It's still a little crazy that you invited me on, especially since you interviewed some crazy people. I appreciate it. And I'm grateful. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. No, man, it's same goes. And you're up next. You know, the numbers don't lie on Substack, clearly. And no, you're genuinely, your posts are amazing. And I can only recommend people to check it out. I'll leave them in the show notes below for people to come on. So yeah, really appreciate it, man.
Amazing.
Awesome. If you've made it this far, you're likely not just a listener, you're ready to be the host. You felt that sense of intimacy and connection with our guest today, and you would like to get the same on your own show and start your own dream show. But you're worried about landing dream guests and all the complications and the mess that is often spoken about when starting your own podcast from scratch. You think starting a podcast requires a huge budget and a whole team, right? That is absolute nonsense. My pro remote podcast blueprint is the ultimate key to skipping the outdated advice and building a high quality, high impact show, even for under $100. It provides the proven strategies and AI templates that I use to this day that you will be able to use to reclaim your time and creative control. And this is a strictly limited opportunity. Don't dilly-dally because there's limited spaces. We've already got one student, Rob, who's joined. That means there's only a couple more spaces to get the Pro Remote Podcast Blueprint course half price. And you need to act very fast because this is a limited offer and you're very early. So if you want to get the early bird discount like Rob has and get the results by watching the course that goes through the exact step-by-step blueprint that I use to this day to create these episodes that you've just watched and get to the success and become Europe's fastest growing under 21 podcaster, and also join live weekly calls with me and use the AI templates and email templates that I use every single day to get the results and just get all my secrets without getting any of the mistakes and failures that I've made, then top link in the description is for you. And if you're ready to launch your own show and get personalized one-to-one help from me and copy my blueprint, which no other podcaster has shared, then I'll see you there. I'm rooting for you. Goodbye. Hope you enjoyed the episode too.